What is up, good people? Welcome to CrypTalk, the UGG podcast show where we talk about the NFT gaming scene. Well, I am your host, Jay Perillo, and for this episode, we will be talking about Axie Infinity, the origin, and the future of the game. Now, I am personally so stoked to be here right now because joining us for this episode is someone who came from the Dota scene as a caster way back 2010, the author of Surviving Esports, The Zayori Story, the owner of the NFT art collection called Zayori Dreadlocks, Sky Mavis's program lead for esports and content creators, and one of the people that we look up to in the crypto and the NFT scene. Of course, let's all welcome Andrew Zayori Campbell. Hello, Zayori, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be here. Glad we could finally connect and chat Axie here for UGG. Really excited about what you guys have been doing in this space, and thank you so much for that very flattering introduction.
Well, you know what? Everybody is excited because you're here with us, and like what you've said, we are finally here. So, how are things going for you so far?
It's good. Busy times in Lunacia per usual. You can probably see that I'm in a hotel room right now, so I apologize for the backdrop here, but no sleep for or no rest for the wicked is what they say. And yeah, it never stops. Hanging out in New York City for a couple days, headed back home, and then going to be on the road once again. So yeah, it's exciting times, and I'm glad that we have a lot on our plate. Given current market conditions, it's great to be just building, like full steam ahead according to plan. This is what we do, baby. Bear market, bull market, we're here to build, and we're going to keep pushing the needle forward.
Yes, that is right. And you know what? One thing that I'm glad of is that you've already managed to get that pearl necklace of yours fixed, because I saw you tweet about that one like a few weeks ago. Well, knowing how huge the player base of Axie Infinity is in the Philippines, do you think we can expect a visit from you guys anytime soon?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I would very much like to visit the Philippines. It's not a super convenient place to get to unless I'm in Southeast Asia already. So I think I'm planning on trying to do some sort of a tour. I also need to get to South America. That one is also pretty highly requested. People really want me to come to Peru, Argentina. So I have some ideas. I think once we're ready, maybe when Origin is a little bit more polished and closer to full launch, I've had some wild ideas for like an Axie world tour, or trying to move around and, do more than just one-off meetups, but like a series of meetups. A lot of ideas in the works, not much locked in yet, but definitely hear you loud and clear. I've been to Southeast Asia quite a bit. I've been to Malaysia like 5 times, but I've actually never been to the Philippines. So I am much overdue for a visit, and very excited the fans there when I finally make it.
Yeah, we're all excited as well. Well, as I've said earlier, we will be talking about Axie Infinity, the origin, and the future of the game. Now, before we head on to the future, let's back up a little bit. I believe some of you, if not most, got connected because of crypto kitties. Now, can you take us back and tell us how it all started and how the game was conceptualized and created?
Yeah, so a funny little anecdote. I've been watching crypto and blockchain for a long time. I was a watcher, not an investor, for a lot of years, but towards the end of 2018, I actually got interested in trying to make a blockchain game. I worked with another Dota commentator named Jenkins. He was studying at Waterloo at the time, and one of our mutual friends who works in like UX design, that kind of thing. We had an idea to try to make a game on the blockchain, and our MVP was this little prisoner's dilemma simulator. And then we came up with something called Crypto Geodes, which actually is strikingly similar to Axie, at least in its general framework. The idea is we have these NFTs, but they need some utility. They need to do something. And that was really what we were toying around with. We had a really cool spec, but we didn't know how to make it. So we kind of just gave up. Times were really early back then, and we just went back to doing Dota commentary and running Dota events and that kind of stuff. But it's interesting that the Axie guys were sort of thinking along the same lines, and really what demotivated us was finding Axie in our market research and going, wow, we've already been beat to the punch. Look at this amazing IP. Look at all these smart contracts. These folks really know what's going on, and there's no way that we'll be able to compete with this. I think they were motivated similarly like we were, seeing CryptoKitties and the hype around that back then. They were the original, wow, these gas fees are out of control because everybody's breeding cats. But the game loop never really seemed completed, right? You breed all these kitties, there's different breeding events, you're trying to get these rare combos, but once you have the cat, now what? What's the next step? What are we doing with these cats? And you can see if the goal is to keep breeding them and more people keep breeding them, eventually we're going to have so many cats that what do they do? And I think that's where Axie was really born, out of that vision of, I have these NFTs I care about, and now I want to use them for stuff. So Axies were created, and that breeding mechanic, that formula was created. And I think that allowed for this really cool platform to be made where, Axie is an actual game where you can use your NFTs as in-game assets that provide real value related to the gameplay. The Axie is your ticket to the universe that has this variety of activities that you'll be able to use your Axies in. We're still in alpha, right? So the universe isn't fully deployed yet, and we basically just have Axie Classic, Axie Origin, but the vision is very much to have this spread of offerings. If you like racing games, then great, your Axies are your ticket to the Axie racing games. If you like fighting games, then exact same kind of thing. Just going to take a little longer to build up to that point. So I think utility is really the key word that has enabled this whole movement here. NFTs as a concept started to disrupt the space, but very quickly it evolved into, what can we do with these NFTs that can create a really meaningful experience for users?
Right. Now, aside from CryptoKitties, are there any other games that inspired Axie Infinity to become the game that it is now?
I'm sure that there are, and this is always hard to separate out, right? Like, for those of us that are in game design or full-time gamers or a full-time commentator, I've played a lot of games, and it would be foolish to say that that amalgam of experiences haven't had any impact on my opinions now of what made good game design mechanics and various other things like that. So absolutely, our founder group has a history of competitive gaming. There are certainly some Dota players. Psych Out was a pretty competitive Dota 1 player back in the day, a little bit in Dota 2. Jiho was a competitive World of Warcraft player, both in raiding and arenas back in the day. Played a Taran warrior named Red Bull, really ahead of the curve on the branding there. So I think that all of that definitely plays a role. The Warcraft 3 map editor, I mean, that is an amazingly powerful platform that allowed Dota and League of Legends and these other MOBA games to be born, right? Because Warcraft 3 had that sandbox and allowed for the easy access of user-generated content, a whole new genre was born, a genre that overtook esports eventually, 10 years removed. These are really powerful things, and I think that is something that has very much inspired us. We've talked about the Land SDK in the past. We have the Builders program. I think we wanted to take what some of these other games have done and up the ante a little bit. What happens if we flip the script in terms of take rate and put most of the money in the hands of the player-owned economy instead of extracting most of it as the game developer? If we combine that model with sort of the sandbox of the map editor, I think the thesis is that can lead to really powerful outcomes that are hard to predict. The community can be so creative and so smart with game design and coming up with concepts that we might not have ideated on our own. So absolutely a huge source of inspiration there. And we can see the missed opportunity, right? Dota is not in Blizzard's ecosystem right now. So I think important to look at some of those things that happened in the past and try to learn from them as we make some similar decisions.
Yes, that is right. Well, I am sure that there are a lot of challenges with creating the game, maintaining the servers, and giving the players an amazing experience. So can you share us your thoughts on how you guys can balance the fun and the earning aspect of the game?
Yeah, it's that's the billion-dollar question right there, right? I use this simple analogy a lot, and forgive me for how simplistic it is, but think about rock, paper, scissors. That is a perfectly balanced game loop. There are 3 pieces, and each piece has the exact same expected value outcome, and each piece is 100% broken relative to the one that it cancels, right? Like rock always thinks paper's busted, and scissors always thinks rock is busted. I think that basic framework is what we take into the game design arena, and our quest is really, how do we scale that up? Rock, paper, scissors only has 3 variables. Axie has hundreds of variables. But I think that general sort of mechanic is what we're looking for. Every game has a meta, right? At any given moment, there might be one type of Axie that's a little bit disproportionately strong or what the best players are using. But the idea that there isn't just one best Axie. At any given moment, you can't just come to me and say, hey, give me the team of the 3 best Axies in the world. It literally doesn't exist. Really, the question is best Axies against what? If you're playing against a poison lineup, well, then having cleanse is probably going to be really useful. If you're playing against a poison lineup and you have no cleanse and no heal and no survivability, ooh, it might not be that fun. So these sort of counters, I think, are a really key aspect of the game design. If I can draw a parallel to the MOBA universe of League of Legends and Dota 2, they're the same genre, but they really are different game design approaches. I think League of Legends tends to take the approach of, hey, this specific thing is too strong or busted. We need to tone it down and normalize it so it's in line with everything else. League of Legends champions do have individual identity, but they're a lot more homogenized than some of the other MOBA games where, a dash is a dash kind of a thing. If you play Dota 2, the hero differential is very extreme. It's almost like playing completely different games. Compare Wind Ranger versus Darkseer, the whole strategy, the whole mechanic, all the lane manipulations, completely different play style. The Dota approach seems to be, hey, this thing is really broken and busted, so it needs a counterplay that's equally strong and busted in these sort of contexts. The Viper versus TA matchup. Viper just kind of wins, all things equal, unless the TA player is insanely skilled and can just run circles around him. I think we take a page out of the Dota book a little bit more there, where we want very unique and identifiable game mechanics that sort of have a sense of identity to them, and can be very powerful against things that they counter, and then can feel pretty bad against things that counter them. This can obviously be a little bit frustrating from a random matchmaking perspective, like, oh man, another poison team. That can be hard, but I think when you put it in the context of esports and like a tournament where, hey, I'm bringing these 5 teams to the tournament, and there's like a drafting phase where you can ban Axies from each other's pool and like read your opponent and really think about like, okay, what are his team comps? What's good versus mine? What's he going to want to ban out of my pool? And really try to get into their head. To me, it's really a lot more exciting when your lineups have this identity and the potential to both hard counter and be hard countered. So sorry, that was a little bit long-winded, but I think on a really high level, that tends to be the game design that we approach, the game design approach that we take to try to maximize the experience, so that it's fun, not play to win, and gives players a lot of options and versatility in terms of what they're doing with their Axies.
Right, so you already talked about the fun aspect of the game. Is it safe to assume that with the recent changes that you guys did with the rewards in terms of AXS, because Season 21 has been extended, right? You guys have changed the reward. You've actually increased the numbers of MAXS that they could win depending on their position or ranking in the leaderboards. Is this you guys trying to balance the fun and the earning aspect of the game?
Yes, I guess so. I mean, so there's different types of earnings, right? SLP and AXS serve different functions. So AXS is the governance token. We are behind on the distribution schedule for getting AXS into the hands of the players. And I think that's one of the reasons why Axie Esports is so cool to me. It's not just, hey, here's $1 million tournament. It's just money and it's just another marketing expense. Really, part of our thesis is Axie is going to be a DAO. The DAO is going to be governed by token holders. So how can we get tokens into the hands of players that are most likely to care about them for their intended purpose of governance? Obviously, people have to survive. Some players will cash out to buy a house or buy a car. And that's totally fine. There's no self-shaming here. That's part of a free market. But all things equal, I want to hedge my bets and try to get those tokens in hands of people that care about having a say in the game balance or the game design or the direction of esports or the investment level in esports and all these really cool aspects. I think that's something that's missing from a lot of traditional esports, where players are kind of just along for the ride and they really don't have much control over the ecosystem. So we got a lot of catching up to do, and we've got a lot of AXS to distribute to a lot of competitive players. It's not just for esports, by the way. We want AXS to go to creatives and community leaders and guild managers. There's a lot of people that have a really big impact in the ecosystem. It's just a little bit less hard to peg to a specific number, whereas with esports we have a ladder, so it's really easy to say, oh, this guy was the best player in any given season, or something like that. So esports seems like a really good starting point to start distributing those tokens in a meaningful way. So when we talk about end of season rewards, that's a big part of really extending that out. I guess it is a part of trying to balance the fun and the play and earn elements for sure. But when it comes to AXS distribution specifically, it's really part of how can we make sure that the players that care most about our game have a chance to have some control over the future of the ecosystem. Obviously, SLP is by definition not a governance token. It's a utility kind of game token, and that's designed to be more of sort of the earning element that's also tied in directly to the economy in terms of, you know, the breeding fees and various other things. So they serve separate purposes, but obviously earning AXS is still akin to earning money at the end of the day because it has a financial value. So short answer is yes. That it's a complicated system, but right. It really has to do more about laying the foundation for a governance system that has a higher chance of succeeding. You know, we have a lot to lose if this DAO fails, so we need to take every precaution we can to hedge our bets to set ourselves up for success.
Right, all right. So Axie Infinity changed the lives of many players, especially in the Philippines. It had built an amazing community and the number of players keep growing day by day. Now, can you tell us about the success of Axie Infinity and how it became to be?
Yes, I can, because I joined right before the parabolic growth. I've been on the team for about 12 and a half months now, something like that. My first month in April of last year was sort of in a half capacity while I was finishing up my last Dota DPC contract for broadcasting. I think for a long time, years, Axie was growing at a very small, kind of steady, linear pace. And part of the thesis around that was, hey, this game that we've got in Axie Classic is cool, but we need more. We need something that's a little bit more appealing to the mass audience, that is maybe a little bit less mind gamey in nature. And that was where Axie Origin came into the fold. The team's been working on Axie Origin for quite a while. It was already in production a year ago when I started. And before we could finish Axie Origin, Axie Classic really started to blow up. The scholarship model started to catch fire, especially in the Philippines, but also in other parts of the world like South America, Europe. We're starting to see traction in Africa, a little bit in the Middle East as well. It's truly a global phenomenon. I think we have Axie players in every country except North Korea. It is a truly global affair. Sorry, just saying that that's a staggering statistic. It blows my mind every time I say that, of how truly global the Axie reach is. Refresh me on what the question was. I'm so sorry. I just derailed myself. I'm so embarrassed. I hate when I do that. I've got too many thoughts flying around at the same time.
Yeah, it's all good. Well, can you tell us about the success of Axie Infinity and how it became to be?
That was it. Yeah, so I think we underestimated the potential growth machine in terms of the scholarship model, this idea of assets being secured on the blockchain through that cryptographic custody, but game assets being easily shareable, in terms of, hey, Scholar, here you go. Here's the password to this user account. Knock yourself out. You can't sell my assets even if you wanted to, but you can use them and play the game. That's a really powerful mechanism, and we knew it was powerful, but when you create something like that and it doesn't catch on, you start to wonder, okay, were we right or were we just incorrect? Maybe this mechanism isn't as powerful as we thought. But then the machine kicked in, and the turbo growth started. When I was hired, we had like 10 or 15 employees, maybe more than that on the engineering side, but it was a small team. They wanted me to sort of build out the creator program, build out some esports programs, and I was really supposed to be a big growth factor. Hey, let's model out some of these programs and implement them. Before I could even finish modeling them out, the insane growth happened, and it was just, Sayori, respond to as many emails as you can. Talk to as many of the creators as possible. Let's just try to keep our heads above water. We're going to work through this as best we can. It was overwhelming. It exceeded all of our wildest expectations by a factor of 5 to 10. Almost overwhelming. So I kind of stumbled into it. I went from like, hey, this is a nice, calm, quiet community to, oh my gosh, the community has quadrupled in size before I could even finish doing my research of what's happening here. So I spent a lot of last year just trying to keep up, just trying to talk to as many community members as I could and try to wrap my brain around how quickly things were evolving.
Well, obviously creating something as big as Axie Infinity isn't a walk in the park, right? So what are the challenges that you guys have faced or is facing as the game becomes more and more popular?
Well, balancing the economy is a really tricky part. One thing that outsiders often criticize Axie for is that we're completely reliant on growth in our current model to be sustainable. There is some truth to that, of course, right? Like right now, people keep breeding Axies, and if there isn't a demand for Axies that are being bred or new players coming in, then the floor will start to fall and prices will start to come down. It's always a balance of supply and demand, basic economic forces.
Right.
However, I think we've been clear really from the get-go that the model will update over time, right? There will be ways in the future to upgrade Axies or like the Lunacian Express, send Axies on a journey, you get some resource in exchange, and then maybe it's fusing Axies, combine two Axies and turn them into one that's, re-rolled or, has some other kind of perk, maybe even a cosmetic perk, right? There's a lot of different ways you can start building in sinks for Axies and making the number of Axies a bit more deflationary and try to create a more like deck building type world where you have less Axies that you care more about rather than having just a huge quantity of Axies. Many of them, maybe one genetic mutation off from that exact specific Axie that you were trying to hit. Obviously, those aren't implemented yet, but we're already thinking ahead about, well, we're not going to be able to grow forever. And when that growth slows down or when we kind of hit that market saturation, we're going to have to tweak this system a little bit to make the whole thing work and be sustainable. So it's something that we're always thinking about. I think we're very realistic in understanding there won't be new users coming in forever. But I think you also have to balance that perspective with blockchain gaming is still really new. There are millions and hundreds of millions of gamers out there that haven't even started to appreciate or adapt this technology yet. So we saw before how quickly things can start to balloon and what insane user demand can really look like. So it's a tricky thing to balance. It's hard to forecast in the crypto space what user adoption is going to look like because people get so excited, they jump into projects and then nobody wants to get left behind. So you don't have that luxury of steady linear growth. It's these big jumps and then these big exodus and these big jumps and people kind of follow the herd. So building within that and making systems that can handle those big peaks and valleys, there is a challenge there for sure. And I don't necessarily have the secret answer other than you just have to play a heads up game. You need to read the room. You need to be agile. You need to be ready to adjust quickly. And you have to have a roadmap, but also be able to adjust the roadmap as market conditions change, as expectations change. Crypto moves at turbo speed. So I often tell anybody that tells you they've got a 5-year plan in crypto is just lying. It's really hard to say where we're going to be true. 5 years from now as an industry.
Yeah, that's right. Well, speaking of challenges, you guys have been hit by one of the, if not the biggest hacking incident in the crypto scene recently. So how did you guys handle it? And what are the things that you guys are planning on doing to prevent something like this from happening again in the future?
Well, on the lowest level, adding more validators is certainly a key step there, which is a process that has already been underway. There's been a huge security audit internally across the board, completely changed a bunch of processes, new devices, new ways of storing information, new platforms. So a lot of the basic security audit stuff has been implemented, and the team is full steam ahead there. I'm really proud of how the Sky Mavis employees handled the bridge being drained. That was a really, really scary time where even internally, it was hard to know exactly how things were going to shake out. But the team never stopped working. The team never lost faith. And at the end of the day, everybody was just heads down, working on their deliverables like any other day. On the esports team, some of the folks asked, what do we do? And my response was, what's going to help leadership the most is just all of us continuing to do what we're supposed to do and just crushing our jobs and making sure no additional issues rise, making sure we don't compound this by getting distracted or losing focus or letting other things fall behind while we work through the hack. So I think it's beyond impressive what our leadership was able to do in terms of raising capital. 150 million within 8 days, led by Binance, is a feat of feats. That is a seriously impressive amount of money in a very short time. Obviously, I wish that the bridge wasn't drained, but given that it happened, I think that was a very quick and solid recovery that certainly made me feel very much at ease of being able to get through this. We're working on bringing the bridge back. That's a very high priority. We're taking, I don't want to say we're taking our time, but we're just being cautious to make sure that everything is lined up. I think the worst case scenario would be opening the bridge again, and then there's some issue with it. So it's going through very vigorous auditing. We're being extra careful to make sure things are triple checked, quadruple checked, with independent parties and things like that. So unfortunately, it has maybe slowed things down a little bit, and there is a lot of pressure for us to move more quickly and release things ahead of schedule. But in this case, I think quality is really what matters, and making sure everything is as ironclad as it can be. So there's a huge amount of detail and effort going into making sure something like this doesn't happen again, and ensuring that, there's no holes.
Well, those things coming from you, I'm sure it'll put a lot of people's mind at ease. And now we're moving on to what a lot of people have been waiting for. We've seen new cards, we've read a lot of things about it, and we're all excited. The Origin. Now, this has been a hot topic for quite a while in the Axie community. Now, how did you guys plan this new update?
So you just mean Axie Origin in general, or like the last patch specifically, or?
The Origin, yeah, the Origin in general.
It's a good question. Remember, I'm not on the game design side, and Origin was already in production when I joined the team. As I spoke about before, I think with Axie Classic, the mind game element of both turns happening at the same time, it appeals to a minority of players. It is really powerful for pros like Elijah and Indez to be able to read their opponent and calculate this expected value. And that is powerful. It does create for really hype moments, and it creates these really cool gameplay mechanics where you can truly outplay someone, and you can come back from crazy odds and 1v3 somebody if you really are in their head and can read their moves. That's amazing. But I don't know that appeals to a mass demographic of people. And I think one of the most fundamental changes of Axie Classic to Axie Origin is the structure of the turns, where obviously in Axie Origin, I have my turn, I play my cards, you see what happens, then it's your turn, you play your cards. So, there are some mind games, obviously. There's still some variants with, secrets, and I think we're going to add more elements so you can store, assets round to round, be it cards or energy or whatever else, some other sort of asset resource management there. Origin still has some, some changes to come for sure. But I think it was really key to shift the flow of turn. There's a name for this, and I'm spacing on what it is, but my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn.
Turn-based.
The back and forth gameplay, turn-based. There you go. That was a big change, and I think that is much more mass appealing and a foundation that we can build a better gaming experience around compared to that original structure. So maybe on like one of the highest levels, that was a big change that we started to work around, and then building out from there. Origin has kind of taken a life of its own, and obviously Origin is not a finished product yet. I don't know that it'll ever be a finished project as we continue adding more features, adding more elements, and making it more competitive. I think what you see now is kind of like an MVP of what Origin is going to be in the future.
I see. I don't know if you noticed, but my eyes just lit up when you mentioned those things. Well, aside from what's available to everybody, are there any sneak peek or leaks that you can share to our audience? For the show, and I just want to emphasize it's not for me, all right? The UGG team, this is not for me, really not for me, for the show.
I like it. I'm always jealous of people like Jiho because as a co-founder, he has a lot more jurisdiction to decide when leaks can come out randomly. Unfortunately, I don't know that I have too many for you. Really, the main leak is what I just said in that last answer. We are aggressively listening to the feedback around Origin. We've heard the complaints from players that being able to store resources round to round is a great mind game element that could maybe make Origin a little bit more competitive. Maybe scale it a bit more as an esport. We hear that loud and clear. I think user feedback is really important. I know people often feel like they aren't listened to, but it takes a lot of effort to collect all of that feedback and then most importantly, organize it and then distill it into something that we can actually use, right? Distill it into something that we can deliver to the game design team that they can start implementing. So that feedback is really important. Everybody that's been grinding Origin and posting on Twitter and writing threads and submitting tickets and bug reports, your work has been instrumental in helping push Origin forward. And there's going to be more and more changes to come. We are all about the iterative design process. So if you don't like what you see now, come on back in a month or two and see how much it's improved, because that's what we want to do. 1% every day. That's our goal internally. And we truly believe if we can hit 1% improvement across the board every day, we're going to be compounded into oblivion before we even realize it. So a humble target, but one that we're pretty dedicated to hitting. So I would say I would expect Origin perhaps to shift maybe slightly more competitive. It seems like that is a pretty common sentiment that we're hearing across the board. And we're still evaluating the best ways to implement those changes. But I think that community feedback is something we take super, super seriously.
Well, I'm sure everybody will be so excited to check those things out, everything that you've mentioned. Now that we've talked about the Origins, do you guys have any other plans to make the experience with Origin even better, like future updates or even upcoming tournaments like what you've mentioned?
100%. Yeah. I mean, obviously, esports, as we talked about before, is a huge part of the thesis. Origin is going to have a great esports future. I really wish I could leak some of that stuff. We did just announce the Filipino Origin Championship. Those qualifiers are going to be announced in a day or two publicly. So we are starting the very first steps of Origin esports. I had to make sure the game was balanced enough that it made sense to run esports events, and we're just getting there. So definitely expect Origin esports to ramp up. Like I said, we've got a lot of AXS that needs to be distributed. We're behind on the distribution schedule, and esports and prizing are one of the easier ways for us to start accelerating that distribution. So definitely something to think about there.
All right, so now I have a final question for you, and I'm sure a lot of people will be very interested to know the answer to this one. Zyori, will the Origins be the final form of Axie Infinity?
It's a bit of a loaded question. Axie is a universe, right? So Origin is just one game within the Axie universe. And I think that's an issue where a lot of people kind of juxtapose those two, where they take a snapshot of right now, they look at either Axie Classic or Axie Origin and say, this is Axie Infinity. You nerfed the card for my Axie, you nerfed my Axie, that's not fair. Right now, I understand that sentiment, but in the future, when there's Axie Land and all these Axie Builder program games that you can use your Axies in, at that point, Axie Origin is just one of many games that you'll be able to use your Axies in. So no one game is the final form of Axie. If you're asking like, our Axie's going to sprout more parts and then we're going to jump into version 4 as soon as version 3 gets stable? No, absolutely not. I think Origin is here to stay, and the plan is to keep iterating until we perfect it as much as we can. But the vision is very much to expand the product offering, have more utility for your Axies, a wider variety of gaming experiences that appeals to a more diverse demographic of gamers. Obviously, not every gamer enjoys esports. Some people just want to collect resources. Some people just want to hang out with their friends. Some people just want to look at visually appealing, graphical experiences. There's nothing wrong with any of those. And I totally recognize esports isn't for everyone. So yes, Axie Origin is here to stay, but is it the final form of Axie? Absolutely not, man. The final form might not even be reached in our lifetime. Who knows?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That is something. That is something. Well, that is it for this episode of CrypTalk. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we'd also like to thank our guest, Andrew Zayori Campbell, for being with us for this episode. Now, Zayori, do you have any messages for our audience and the Axie Infinity fans out there?
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for playing. We really appreciate you. These are wild times, both for the crypto market and the Axie universe. But despite the market turbulence, I just want to assure everyone that we are heads down, still building, full steam ahead. This doesn't change anything in terms of our thesis, in terms of our vision, in terms of our dedication. I have a lot of big esports activations in the pipeline to keep an eye out for, and they're all full steam ahead. We have a lot of external partners that are bullish on what we're trying to build here and what our mission is, regardless of any current market sentiment. So I would encourage everyone to join us in terms of that long-term vision. Unfortunately, it does take patience and time to really build these big partnerships and these big deals, but the team is really putting in a lot of effort, and I think that'll be made abundantly clear over the next 6 months or so as some of these big initiatives start getting announced and delivered. So stay tuned, a lot to come. Really appreciate all your support, and thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
All right. Of course, if they want to get connected with you, for sure you are very active on social media now. Where can they find you, and are there any upcoming projects of yours that you'd like to let us know about?
Yeah, I'm Zayori TV everywhere, every social media. You can find me. Zayori.tv is my website. I'm posting pictures, content all over the place, so that'll be the best way to stay up to date.
All right. Well, to our viewers, you can catch our previous episode on our official United Gamers Guild website at United Gamers Guild or unitedgamers.gg. You may also follow our official Facebook page at facebook.com/United Gamers Guild or on Twitter at UGG Network. And you can also join our official Discord server and become a part of our ever-growing community. Well, thank you so much, Zayori, for being with us. It's actually really a pleasure to be here with you right now. And thank you, good people, for watching. Again, this is Jay Perillo, and we'll see you on the next episode of CrypTalk.